Good Thursday to you, everybody, in Calm 710. Welcome again to week boom 3 and the review of your material from week 2. How's everybody doing? Let's get things in proper order, eh? Last of a very delicious cafe au lait in my Griffin cup. Memorializes my family's Welsh heritage. But truth be told, I know as much about living in Wales or the British Isles as I know about living at the bottom of the ocean, which is absolutely nothing. I, like all the rest of us, am just a plain old American mutt. Okay, let's take a look at the answers from last week and see what you did and what we can add. A couple of reminders. I don't mean to wag my finger like that. Make sure that you are posting your paper topics. I'll be taking a look at them this weekend. Okay, and that's in the pinned discussion section. I'm still getting used to the vocabulary of Canvas, if you will. All right, because remember, you've got part number 1 coming up. And then likewise, and coming here real soon, I will post a link for you to post your assignment number 1, that is of the 4 reviews that you're going to do this semester. And, you're picking an international media organization and you're going to tell us about it. And this exercise is designed to get you to think about how you take a lot of information and cram it into like about 10 minutes, which is standard for paper presentations. Okay. So get ready for that. Some of you have asked me, can we review the same organization or topic that we're going to focus on for our paper? Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Someone asked me, do you have to? Does the one have to be the other? No, they can be completely different things. You can look at, something entirely different. It doesn't have to be the same thing. I'm going to turn. Speaking of thing, I'm going to turn that off. That's a heater in my office. All right. But it annoys me. So anyway, yes, if you want to, say for the first organization that you look at, since you're looking, into it anyway, you could make that the focus of your paper topic. No, it doesn't have to be the same thing. Okay. But remember, both of those are on the horizon by way of deadlines. Okay. Let's take a look at the questions and see what you said and see what we can bring to the discussion that might be helpful to you. Question number 1, why, according to Vernon, is radio particularly useful? You could say attractive, if you like, to women throughout the African countries discussed. Okay, Holly, let's take you first because you went first and you were crushing it this last week. Good job, Holly. Vernon talked about what happened when radio was introduced in these African countries. Women outnumbered men in the country, and the religion was also attractive to them because they could become full members if converted. Radio is a great option to research broad audience, not just women. With the background of everything happened in the country, women were drawn to listen to those religious programs on the radio. Also discussed was that radio can't control who listens to the program, so they could reach women more than other mediums could. Women could now listen to perspectives they weren't getting locally. Okay, true. And also we might note that radio, by the nature of the medium, appealed to women because they could get together in groups, which they often did, and they could have the radio. It's something that is a shared media. That is, you can still interact with one another and then have the media through that medium. Unlike I'm not saying you can't say, pick up a smartphone and have an interaction. All right. But it's more difficult because eyes are focused on the smartphone and then not so much each other. It is less adept as a medium, say smartphones, television, these things, at being a secondary occupation engagement than radio, because you can, driving your car, you can listen to radio. In the kitchen, talking with a group of friends, you can have the radio on. Okay, so it fit well into the dynamics that govern the interaction of that gender. All right. And what I want you to keep in mind from this is, as you think about, not just for this class, but as you think about media and mediums, radio's been around for some time. Newer is not always better. Better is what fits the dynamics of the group that you're trying to reach. Okay. All right. Question number 2. What does Vernon investigate in her study, and what methodology does she employ? Can you think of another methodology she might have employed? Now, these kinds of questions, as I mentioned in the first video, I want you to be really critical when you pick up a source. It doesn't matter if it's a book or if it's an article or whatever. I want you to start asking, what are the hypotheses of this author? What's the methodology that they propose to answer them? Because not all methodologies are going to be, they will answer all hypotheses, right? What kind of data does the author pull down? How do they analyze that data? Do they overstretch their conclusions from the data that they get? I want you to be critical. Just because it's in print, don't make it true, as the saying goes. Okay, so Mike, let's take a look at what you said. To systematically systematically investigate the work of the Adventist Day Radio, AWR, in Tanzania, Vernon utilized an historical qualitative research design in the form of an instrumental case study. The author followed deductive logic, resulting in a particularistic, descriptive, inductive, and interpretive findings. The data was gathered from various church documents covering 25 years. In considering other methodologies, it would have been of value to conduct qualitative in-person interviews with participants and listeners rather than only relying on documents. Excellent point. Excellent. If you're going to talk to people that listen to this and became converts, you could enrich and inform your understanding of that by actually talking to the person. Erica, Vernon used historical systematic methodology, visiting archives, interpreting historical documents, etc., etc. One thing that I would have tried to do is collect information from the radio staff or interview one person who may have been impacted by the radio programming. Okay, so you're making a similar suggestion as Mike, but on the other side of the equation, talk to the staff, which might have made for an interesting study if you could gotten a picture of what it was the staff had hoped, or maybe the programmers had hoped people would take away from the programs. And then here's an idea: doing a quantitative survey of the people who listen to those programs to find out if, what was the causation or correlation between what the programmers, the staffs hoped they would take away and what they actually took away. All right. So when you look at a study, again, doesn't matter who or what, I want you to start asking these questions. And no, you're not, asking questions for question's sakes, just to punch holes in the study or in the argument. No, you're trying to discern whether the study, the argument in front of you is well done. And, this is something that you would rely on as evidentiary, or you would adopt as a methodology. I mean, look, we live in a time and a place in which our challenge as scholars, it's not so much getting to the information, because through, even devices that fit into our hands like this, we have a portal on information quite literally from around the planet. Although there is not an internet, understand there are internets, and some of them connect and some of them don't. So that being given, talking about communication in a global environment. But anyway, our major challenge is not getting to the information. Nay. Our major challenge is sorting the information, sorting the good stuff from the bad stuff, the useful stuff from the not useful stuff, the well done from the poorly done, because it is such a blizzard of information. And even, journals used to be, there was a fairly high bar, first of all, to be able to set up and establish a journal. And then, because there weren't a whole lot of them, to get into a journal. Now, I'm not saying a respectable, peer-reviewed journal is just like, but I mean, it's sort of like, the line is getting real blurry between what a scholarly journal is and is not, in the same sense that the line is getting blurry between what is and is not news, who is and is not a news broadcaster, or what is or is not a news source. And you've got this entire, not even the word is antiquated anymore, blogosphere over here, and then all the websites that aren't really blogs that go into it. Is that not news? Okay. So I want you to practice being able to discern what's well done and what is not so well done. This is your challenge going forward. Question number 3. Consider the research question, 5 subsets in chapter 1 of Vernon using the description of Vernon's case study. For chapter 1, formulate 2 additional research questions that you believe would be pertinent to Vernon's studies. Briefly explain your research questions. Erica, let's go back to you because I like what you were doing here. I would ask these 2 additional questions. What are the ages of those converting? What are the ages of those meeting regularly? Okay. That's interesting because that might tell you something about the cohorts and who was responding not only to the media on the radio, but what their response rate was, especially if you did it quantitatively. Okay, if you took a quantitative crack at it. Mike, let's go back to you again, too. You had a couple of additional ones. Research 1. In what ways has the programming on AWR had a lasting effect on listeners' interest and commitment to world Adventism? All right. So beyond the conversion, how much stay power? Yeah. And if I ever pronounce your name wrong, please email me and straighten me out. Okay. Nisa, is it Naissa? The A is silent. Nisa. Your second RQ is there a preferred way that this information should be communicated that is narrated by male, female, conversational news style? That is, what was the optimal formatting for the programming? Interesting question. Okay, very good. Very, very good. Okay, so remember to be critical, not a critic, but be critical of an article's hypotheses, the methodology, the data, all that stuff. Excuse me. A well-written article is going to have this information in the abstract. In fact, look for that information in the abstract. I'll tell you what I do as a researcher. I go straight to the abstract. And if I don't see that, if I don't see some, even a mention by way of the briefest outline of what are the major hypotheses, what's the methodology, what kind of data was gathered, and then how was it formulated. In a lot of journals, they will have a maximum word count for the abstract. So you're not going to get, okay, I understand that. But if those items aren't sort of checked off, unless there's something really compelling going on in the article, I typically go, yeah, no, I don't think this is an indicator to me this thing is not organized in a way that it's going to be worth my time. Okay. All right. Question number 4. Now we turn back to broader cultural issues and discussion. The Seventh-day Adventist Church was established in Battle Creek, Michigan in 1863. Given this, in your opinion, were the media efforts of the SDA in Tanzania examples of cultural imperialism? If the international media landscape is flat or flattening, is the theory of cultural imperialism still relevant? Okay. Nisa, let's go back to you again. Yes and no. Now, I'm going to pick on you here just a little bit. I want you to develop also the habit as scholars of being able to make a determination. Now, if it's not an absolutely overwhelming, strong, positive yes or no, okay, say that. Say, I would be inclined to say yes, I think, because there could be mitigating factors, but my conclusion is yes. Or I would be inclined to say no, because there could be mitigating factors or things that are not, I'm missing or might be discussed, but my best evaluation is no, or whatever it is. Okay. Avoid not making a decision. And I'm not picking on you, but I often see this in dissertations and dissertation defenses. It's okay. It's okay to take a position on something. And it's likewise okay to say, these are the limitations of my study. And so there may be elements that if added in would bring a different outcome, but I just don't have them here. That's okay. That's quite okay. But let's go back to you, Nisa. It is cultural imperialism because of its roots, but I don't think the study was done as detailed as it could have been, while radio was and still is really effective in getting message across. I wish the study would have spread out and covered more categories, received more feedback from listeners, to focus more on why they wanted to hear certain subjects, which is a good point. And that's why picture answer. The question becomes, is it cultural imperialism if somebody wants to hear it? Okay, now I reference a work in the question, The World is Flat, and I've I think I've referenced this before in some of the questions, but I want to recommend this work to you. Okay, it's by Thomas Friedman, The World is Flat, and although let's see, here we go, A Brief History of the 21st Century, okay? And although its initial publication was, let's see, when was it first issued? 2005, and you go, yikes, that's like almost 20 years ago. He's updated and added stuff. And I think the 2007. Okay. The trends that Friedman puts his finger on and says, look, this is smashing down the cultural landscape across the globe, are still unfolding. Some of them are really significant trends, like offshoring. All right. I won't go into that. Read the book. And they are not done. And they are still developing, and they are still evolving, and they are still impacting cultural exchange. But back to the central question, if somebody wants something from one culture to another, is that imperialism? I want you to think of culture like this. I'm going to give you an operational definition, because I believe, I know we're not anthropologists, okay? But I believe that where culture is concerned, we get it wrong, okay? Culture is not a thing, okay? It's not an artifact that is a product of a behavior. It's not a vase in a museum. It's not a painting. It's not a particular style of dress. It's not a particular food. Those are artifacts. And literally that word comes from artifice, the front part of what you see, but not what's behind it. Like, and not artificial in the sense that it's fake, but that it's it's the front. Think of it like a building front, okay? And then what's behind it. Those are artifacts. Those are products of culture. Culture is a set of behaviors used by a group of people in a particular place, in a particular time, to solve a particular set of problems. And those problems can be material, like how do we get food? They can be metaphysical. Where is our place in the created order? Okay. They can be political. How do we organize ourselves? And on and on and on. But what culture is a set of behaviors. And behaviors for people do and must change, because the dynamic, the environment that the peoples live in changes. There's no such thing as a static environment. Okay. And I think when we talk about culture today, and I mean broadly as a culture, we misunderstand that, or we do not understand that. So it raises the question, if somebody wants something, is that cultural imperialism? So let's say, Mike, your take was interesting here. In the case of the SDE Church, it seems from Vernon's research that they sought to evangelize the indigenous population and acclimate them to the religious tenets and philosophy. The organization set up schools. The radio programs were crafted to deliver messages intended to generate interest in Adventism. Excuse me, you wrote this perfectly. It's my fault in reading it. As this is the case, AWR is acting within the definition of cultural imperialism. While Change argues that cultural imperialism is not relevant in the current media landscape, the goal of the SDA oversteps the practice of globalization. The church divided Tanzania into targeted sections, and while they provided healthcare, they also set up schools to put forth their Adventist ideals and recruiting international advantages in both face-to-face and satellite evangelism to preach to the population. The SDA Church sought to change attitudes and impose its culture within Tanzania. Okay, good answer. Now, this raises the question, and I'm not picking on you, Mike, but this raises the question that if we understand that culture is a set of behaviors, are there behaviors that are better suited to some circumstance than other behaviors, not circumstance? Okay. Are there behaviors that are more beneficial to the well-being of a populace than other behaviors? And if that's the case, introducing those behaviors is that imposition. Okay, I throw that out there. So get a copy of Friedman's The World is Flat, and he has several flatteners. That is how new technologies and new practices are reshaping how it is that cultures interact with each other. And then I was thinking about Friedman's book, and I was thinking, it's because he gives sort of these examples, and it's not abstract, but it's like, and then this happens. It's very removed from actual events. All right, let me recommend this book to you by way of actual events that demonstrate how the flatteners that Friedman lists are in play to cause a mixing of the cultures across the planet. Okay, this book by Patrick Kingsley, The New Odyssey, the story of Europe's refugee crisis. And you might be saying, okay, that's weird. What does that have to do with global communication and global environment? Kingsley's a journalist, but one of the things that he does that I really respect by way of research is he embeds himself with refugees coming out of the Middle East, out of Central Asia, and out of Africa to Europe, to find out how it is that as a culture, they're navigating, literally into this new space, Europe, and then how as cultures, they are staying together and integrating. And surprisingly, center stage for all of those questions are the very same technological innovations and changes in communication that Friedman mentions in his The World is Flat. So, and it's just a good read. Kingsley is an excellent writer and author. Okay. If you want to see, how this is playing out in the real world, and this is not that old. In fact, and this phenomenon of immigration into Europe out of these regions is still going on. So it's not like this is a dead and done issue. This is 2016. Okay, read Kingsley's book. All right, everybody, good job. Remember, paper topics, please. Presentation. I'm not gonna ask you to post what organizations you're interested in. You can figure that out. All right. So have a good rest of the week. Okay. I think about you. I do pray about you. Especially some of you have reached out to me. You're having some particular difficulties and issues, and you know who you are, and you know that my prayers are with you. And I will see you on Canvas. Bye-bye.